Friday night NBA Hardwood. Welcome to the Run Pure Sports Happy Hour, as we sometimes like to call it. I am JT Hayes. If you are new, you're probably not new, so go ahead and hit the like button. First thing you should be doing when you jump in here. If you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, go ahead and subscribe. And if for some reason you're still watching our shows and you're not a member, if you haven't seen the screenshots and been induced or coerced into coming in, we have a code for new members. It's very simple. New year, you get 15% off of your first month's payment. That includes any product with our partner SaberSim. So go ahead and jump on in. We've got a Discord that is very lively. We were having a lively debate about rookie NBA contracts today. That was the topic du jour, given the issues that the Warriors are having. So really, really interesting stuff there this afternoon. If you missed that, again, the code is New Year. We've got a 14-game NBA slate that's been cut down on DraftKings to 11, cut down a little further than that on FanDuel. I think on FanDuel it is an 8-game slate, 8 or 9-game slate, something like that. Again, the industry taking those late games off based on, I think, a number of different things. Bobby Hare and I discussed that on the pod last night, whether it's the larger rotations, the new rules that make players have to be available unless a medical doctor actually considers them injured, DC. I mean, consider that. These multi-million-dollar players and organizations actually are going to be second-guessed by medical doctors hired independently by the NBA. So it's fascinating stuff here in 2024. Jacob Stubbs, Daniel Mardoff, Alex. People are talking about Trevelin Queen, AP. I saw that there was a push to draft him into the player pool. Not really sure why people were so interested in Trevelin Queen, but that's the type of slate that we have. It seems like every night we're hunting for value. I think there is some good value on this slate that's going a little bit overlooked that people might not think of on their own, but happy Friday to you. How is your Friday going? Did you enjoy in the banter about the union and the rookie contracts, and what are your overall thoughts on this first Friday night slate in January?
Yeah, I guess I must have missed that back and forth conversation in the Discord. I'll have to check it out.
Don't know how you could have.
I was trying to stay dialed, trying to find some winners for this fabulous Friday. And, Trevelin, whatever they call him, Queen. I mean, man, this guy played like 40 minutes, had like a 7% usage rate, shot the ball like -6 times. I don't like plays like that, but the Magic are going to be thin tonight. And we get a couple of same-game matchups that we saw on Wednesday. Wizards, Cavs, what a disaster. And another disaster. Mavericks playing the Portland Blazers once again. So these type of spots are kind of interesting. I like how they broke the slate up. I think it's going to be a good one tonight.
Trevelin Queen not popping in projections, by the way. If you're running an optimizer, you're not going to get a lot of Trevelin Queen DC. But there is some news. There's potentially big news, and it's going to be in that Portland-Dallas game. Got a lot of the big men for Dallas, which is always a train wreck to navigate, questionable or already ruled out. And then midday, Luka Doncic with the downgrade based on some ankle swelling. So that becomes a very important game. Whereas last night when Bobby and I talked about it on his pod, we were kind of like, yeah, we're kind of off this game. A lot of buys. You really don't want anybody but Luka or maybe Kyrie. On the Dallas side, now all of a sudden you don't have Kyrie. You have Portland being thin. But happy Friday to you. What are your thoughts overall on this 11-game slate on DraftKings?
Yeah, happy Friday, and I guess I missed that discussion as well. Sometimes, the Discord, it's popping so much over at the Run Pure Sports Discord that sometimes, you got to pull the Abe Simpson going into the club gif where he walks in, he sees what's going on, and he walks right out the other direction because it's just, you want to pop in there and you got something to say, but there's a vibrant discussion going on already, and you don't want to interrupt things. So, yeah, awesome stuff in the RPS Discord for sure. A fun 11-game slate. I'm glad about the change that DraftKings has made, and of course, as always seems to be the case, FanDuel follows suit. A few weeks later, it's been kind of a long-term trend there. Do you really need more than 11 NBA games to choose from? In my opinion, no, you do not. And, Friday night, maybe people want to do some stuff, go out or whatever. Slate ends, an hour or hour and a half earlier than otherwise would have. I think that's a good change for the industry. So I'm happy about that. But yeah, as always, on an 11-game NBA slate, tons of news that's already come, and then tons of news we're waiting on. And on this big of a slate, probably some news that we don't have any idea about quite yet that will drop, maybe between now and the start of the slate 2 hours from now, or maybe after the slate starts. And that can obviously present some opportunities. We talked a lot about backloading rosters when you can, if you're, available to make swaps. Oftentimes, some of the very best plays on the slate are from news that people didn't expect, or even questionable players that people just, maybe they don't want to deal with the 50-50 situation in the last game of the night, so they just avoid it. So yeah, we'll see how it all breaks down, but obviously a ton to talk about as it is right now.
We'll get into all of that on this 11 game. We're going to focus on the 11 games for DraftKings. If you have questions specific to FanDuel, go ahead and drop them in the chat box here. Alex reminding us that Yahoo Fantasy still has a full slate. So if you're still playing over there, then you can go ahead and get your excitement with the 14 games. But we'll start with the first game on the slate. Utah heading into Boston after a big win over Detroit. Boston, of course, coming off a heartbreaking loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder. They return home now, though. They're 14-point favorites. The only injury news in this game is that Al Horford is questionable due to rest, AP, and rest is something that the NBA front office does not like. So we'll see if Horford actually plays here. But what are your thoughts? Any interest at all in this massive Utah Jazz rotation? Or on the Boston side, it is a good matchup, and some of these guys are priced a little bit down.
Yeah, so the Celtics, obviously probably the best starting five, I think, in the league when they're all healthy, top to bottom, Drew Holiday to Porzingis. They don't really need Al Horford, in my opinion, to take care of business tonight against this Jazz team. Obviously, 14-point favorites. That's just massive. Like, look what the Cavs did to this Wizards team in Cleveland. Vegas still has them as, I think 9.5 or 10-point favorites. So, I think Boston takes care of business here. So, as far as DFS viability, I would limit it to one max in tournaments. I think, is there a chance Porzingis could get there? Sure. The matchup is very favorable. Jason Tatum. I like Tatum in back and forth type of environments. I don't see this being a game where Tatum is really pushed. So again, if you disagree with me and if you think he is, I would try to find a piece on the Jazz side. Now that's obviously the far more difficult side to break down because they run such a wide rotation. They're playing three bigs right now with John Collins starting, and then Walker Kessler gets mixed in. Kelly Olynyk gets some minutes. Could one of them get there? Yeah, sure, one could. Is it, something that we can predict or project? That's where it becomes very difficult. Obviously, Jordan Clarkson has been incredible, especially off the bench. I assume they'll continue to bring him off the bench. And if the Jazz keep it close, it's probably going to come down to him. But I am pretty much off this game. I think there's better spots tonight to target.
DC, Utah in Boston. The only piece here that I have even some mild interest in is Kristaps Porzingis. Still too cheap, I think, at 8,100 with centers just dominating this weak passive front court for Utah. What are your thoughts here, Utah and the Boston Celtics?
Yeah, Porzingis has been awesome. 50-plus fantasy points in 4 of his last 5, or very close to it anyway. You can play him at power forward too, which is a big boon given that a lot of the best values on a night-to-night basis usually do come at the center position. I think that's mostly true tonight as well. So yeah, 8,100 for Porzingis. He's going to play well here, right? There's really no question about that against Utah. It's just a question of will he get enough minutes. Obviously, if Al Horford's out, that would help that to some extent. And I do think against Utah, we'll see, at least one of the Boston guys get there in the end. But on an 11-game slate, it's kind of hard to predict too. You can just predict who it will be. You can attack this Utah team so many different ways. Obviously, Boston has many different ways to get the job done here. It seems like they can kind of pick and choose how they do it. And so, yeah, I don't see myself locking into much in this early game like AP's rule. Just one Boston guy. And if you want to play someone from Utah, that's fine. I'm probably not going to do it myself against one of the best defenses in the league in the first game of the night. Just doesn't seem like the play to make. I see some people in chat mentioning Jordan Clarkson coming off 2 fantastic games, but rough spot for him against that fantastic backcourt defense of Boston on the road. Wouldn't expect a third big game out of Clarkson. So I'm mostly off this game. I think I'm with you, JT. Porzingis, my favorite play in it, but I don't feel the need to grab really anybody from this first game of the night.
And I'm with you. Not going to chase the Jordan Clarkson upside. That was against Detroit in overtime. There's a much different matchup here where they're 14-point dogs on the road. We'll move on to the next game, DC, and this is a game that a lot of people have been talking about all day. People are going to want to talk about it. People talking about it in chat. Atlanta headed into Indiana, and a 262 total. Indiana favored by 3 points. The news here for Atlanta, DeAndre Hunter and Vit Krejci remain out. For the Pacers, it's Bruce Brown and Andrew Nembhard questionable. There's a lot of pieces here on this game. The problem here with the Pacers are it's very difficult to figure out which rotation pieces are going to be the ones that you want. It's an 11-game slate. I get the total. That's fine. You want to play Tyrese Halliburton? Fine. You want to take a shot on Miles Turner, who looks just slightly underpriced? Okay, fine. My favorite plays here on the Atlanta side, DC. What about you?
Yeah, Indiana's tough when they're mostly fully healthy, which they are now. We'll see if Brown and Nembhard end up sitting out. I think Nembhard more likely to miss this game than Brown is. But if both those guys do miss, some value does open up. I think TJ McConnell at that point would become a really good play. I think he's somewhat viable if one or the other misses, just given how good this matchup is against Atlanta. And he puts up numbers when he gets in the game. It's just the minutes for him are kind of all over the board. So something to watch there on the early news with Brown and Andrew Nembhard. Halliburton, 10-2, I think is a little bit too cheap for him. I don't know if he's all the way up there with guys. He's not with guys like Jokic and Luka Doncic, but he's been awesome, super consistent with an upside in this matchup. I think Halliburton a pretty good early spend if you want to lock somebody in. And the Indiana thing is weird on their rotations. JT, you mentioned you don't know who it's going to be. You can look at that as it's if you're talking cash games, which most people aren't, to be honest, it's not a good thing. You can't really target these wing pieces for Indiana. But in tournaments, minutes volatility can be a good thing, right? Because if you play well, you'll get more minutes with Indiana. Generally, that's generally the case with them. And so, players that don't necessarily pop in projections and are 3% owned. We got Benedict Mathurin on Monday as the play of the day. Someone like that, he plays well, his shot falls, and all of a sudden he's getting 35 minutes in the game. And that's true of most of these guys, Buddy Hield, Andrew Nesmith. And so it does allow you the opportunity to get some upside for a lower price and lower ownership than maybe you can otherwise get. Obviously, that would be even more true if the Brown and Nembhard did end up missing. And then Atlanta, Jalen Johnson came through in a big way as chalk in that last slate. He's been really, really good these last 3 games, up to 6,900, so a little bit more expensive. But in this matchup, I do think he is a pretty viable play. I would throw Sadiq Bey as a decent play as well. You're going to get 35 minutes in this pace-up matchup, 5,900. I'll take a shot there. And then one of my favorite Pacers who's been kind of quietly balling out a little bit since moving to the bench is Obi Toppin. Seems like he's got a little bit better vibe with the bench crew, 34 fantasy points last time out against Milwaukee. Another player who, his minutes fluctuate depending on how he plays, but played well in the last 2 games, got 27 and 29 minutes. I think the way he plays, right? Athlete who can get up and down the court, matches up a little bit better with Atlanta with a 262 total than maybe Miles Turner and, Jalen Smith. Or not Jalen Smith. Jalen Smith, Isaiah Jackson. Yeah, just, more traditional type centers. So he'll be super low owned, but 4,600 value is a little bit hard to come by. I don't mind taking a shot on Obi Toppin as well.
AP, DC mentioned Sadiq Bey. I actually prefer his price to Jalen Johnson's tonight, 5,900 on DraftKings. The other price for Atlanta that stood out to me, it's a guy who's playing 30 minutes. It is off the bench, but Bogdan Bogdanovic at 6,100 on DraftKings in this matchup is very tempting. And I happen to think that Tyrese Halliburton may be the best spend up on the entire slate. What are your thoughts here, Indiana hosting Atlanta?
Yeah, I mean, this game is like I fired I think the first time. There's been a few games where we've had a 260 or higher total, and it's usually been like Bucks, Pacers, but I've been hesitant because they've played each other so many times, and you kind of figure each other out. Now we get a spot where you have two of the more exciting guards in Trae Young, Tyrese Halliburton. Trae Young, more of a scoring, more scoring upside from him. But again, like both of these guys, Halliburton and Trae Young, averaging well over 10 assists per game. I just think it's going to be back forth. Both teams just, sprinting, getting up easy buckets. And yeah, if Sadiq Bey or Jalen Johnson, if they get into any type of foul trouble, you're going to get more run from Bogdan. Bogdan, just an absolute true shooter. He's going to get his run either way. And he's been playing right around 27, 28 minutes. That's plenty of time. That's plenty of time for him to get it done. I mean, Max Strus, I think he played like 27 minutes against the Wizards last game, put up like a 40-piece. That's the type of role that Bogdan's going to be in against this Pacers team that just plays with so much pace. I agree with you. I think Halliburton, I think he could be the highest scoring guy on the slate tonight. I very, very much think so. And then Jalen Johnson, I'm going right back to him. He is an absolute stud, and he showed it in a great matchup against OKC. Despite getting into foul trouble early on in that game, he still absolutely smashed. I love power forwards against this Pacers team. I think Jalen Johnson is like a lock for me tonight. Bogdan, solid. Bey, solid. And then, Trae or DeJounte. The Pacers side, a little bit more difficult. They obviously run a much wider rotation. The only guy I feel very, very confident and comfortable in playing is Halliburton. And even Bruce Brown, they want him for his defense, but it's not like he's having that good of a year. I mean, Rick Carlisle is just, he has no patience with this. Like, if you make a mistake, yanking you, getting someone else in there. And they have a lot of depth, too. So for me, it's Halliburton, and then it's Jalen Johnson. And then from there on, our guy Gary was in chat saying you need three pieces. Well, I agree with that. It's just that third piece outside of Halliburton and Jalen Johnson as like the core building blocks for me. I think it's probably Bogdan off the bench. And I kind of like how that all correlates together and works well. The other thing I was looking at is, can you play Trae Young, Halliburton together? I think the way, if you want a sneaky way to maybe do it, is take advantage, and we're going to talk about this game soon, take advantage of how horrendous the Wizards are. Play the Cavs back. I know they just smashed, but play the Cavs backups against Sam Merrill, Tristan Thompson, or whatever. And that's a way to make it work. Like, they're going to get run, and they're probably going to smash again against this shitty Wizards team. So that's a little free tidbit there for you guys. But for me, it's Jalen Johnson, Tyrese Halliburton, my two favorite plays in this game.
All right. Al Horford has been ruled out. Hit the like button for Al Horford resting this evening, and hit the like button for us. AP, it's clear you want to talk about this game, so we're going to get to it. Washington at Cleveland.
Oh, man.
Cleveland favored by 10, 237.5. The only injury news here, on top of who is already been out for Cleveland, of course, is that Ty Jerome remains out, and Landry Shamet will miss this game for Washington. This is a game that you like. Is this a spot where you see Donovan Mitchell bounce back from a down performance the other night? Is it a game where you can see somehow Washington competing, even though it looks like Kuzma's going to be traded and maybe lots of other pieces from this Washington team, and maybe they're just flat out tired of Wes Unseld Jr.? What are your thoughts here, Washington heading into Cleveland again?
Yeah, the only reason Donnie Mitch had a down game was because of the blowout. This game, all right, so first off, Landry Shamet being out is really big news, because that second unit that Wes Unseld Jr. runs out there, he does it for defensive purposes. They got smoked. Like, they got absolutely smoked, and he just let him play towards the end of the third, actually halfway through the third quarter. And he's like, we'll just let you guys finish the game, lose by 40, 50 points. We don't care. They're They're going to have a problem, though. Landry Shamet in the second quarter was the only guy that came in and could score. Coulibaly couldn't score. He's good defensively, but he couldn't score. DeLon Wright is just terrible. Like, this guy out there, I mean, maybe he needs to go back to the G League. I don't know what he needs to do, but he was horrendous. And then it's not like – here's the other problem with the Wizards. It's not like Jordan Poole's been terrible. Kyle Kuzma has his moments, but, like, this team is just – it's a mess. Like, Denny Abdia, it was even his birthday last game on Wednesday too, and he got yanked because he made a mistake. And Wes Unseld was just like, we'll just let this, the likes of Landry Shamet, DeLon Wright, Corey Kispert, Mike Muscala cook, and they obviously got cooked. So, but back to, I see this game playing out one of two ways. And the Wizards have been in this spot where they've gotten absolutely blown out by a team. One was against Orlando early on. And the second game they did fight. They showed up. They fought a little bit harder. And it's just so tough. But with Landry Shamet out, I do think they're going to need more scoring. And they're kind of limited to where they need to go to. So as gross as it sounds, it could be a spot where Jordan Poole, maybe they give him a little bit more run. He had his best start, 5-minute start in the first quarter. And then it's like, Wes Unseld's like, nope, enough of that. You made too many threes. You had too good of a start. We'll yank you out. I know he actually missed some shots after that, but still, this is a guy you're paying a lot of money right now. He's been terrible, but at least put him out there, get him embarrassed. Like, have us all make fun of him. Just at least give him the minutes. It's like it's crazy what they're doing. But we should see a tighter rotation on the Wizards side. So if they keep it close, it's going to have to be like a Kuzma or Poole. One of these guys is going to have to do it. I don't know who. And then on the other side, if it stays close, Donnie Mitch is going to go off. He definitely is. I could also see a similar game to what we saw, where it's like Karis LeVert comes in, gets whatever he wants. I mean, Sam Merrill comes in, gets Sam Merrill was wide open, like every shot he took. Like the Wizards fail to close out on anyone. They don't get a hand in the face. Like, you get so many open 3-point looks. Like, look at Max Strus last game. He would come through, no one fights through a screen, wide open look, and he would nail. So again, it's Max Strus, it's Karis LeVert, Sam. I love Sam Merrill. I'm going right back to him. He was actually only like 9 or 8% owned last slate, so keep that in mind. And there's some other, I think, way fringier value plays that people are talking about. Jared Allen, Biggs. We saw Tristan Thompson and Jared Allen both smash against this team. So a lot of ways you can play it. I'm going to have exposure to the Cavs side. I'm going to run it a few different ways. One where I build out like a Donnie Mitch script. The other where I build up, plugging in these backups. Because I just think at the end of the day, you're going to see a lot of fire emojis from the Cavaliers side. It's just figuring out your builds and how you want it all to fit together. Wizards side, I don't trust at all.
DC, Alex in chat is salivating over playing Tyus Jones at 5,800. That might be a bit of an exaggeration, but he thinks that he's a good play here. Meanwhile, if you look at some of the optos, the plays that they're giving you from the Wizards are DeLon Wright and Corey Kispert, which would lead you to believe that this is not going to be a game that's all that competitive. It looks like the Wizards are going through something here. Maybe that leads to a coaching change. Maybe it just leads to a bunch of trades. But what are your thoughts here, Washington and Cleveland?
Yeah, I mean, I echo a lot of what AP said on Wednesday. I looked at some of those Wizards prices: Jordan Poole, Tyus Jones, Kyle Kuzma. I like the Cavs side. I had LeVert and Jared Allen. Had a little mini game stack in this one. The Wizards guys, I think Jordan Poole is like 0.6% ownership. All of them were super low. And they come out of the gate and they're playing pretty well. Jordan Poole's got like 13 fantasy points 5 minutes into the first quarter. He cools off a little bit in the rest of the first quarter from there. But it's looking pretty good at super low ownerships. And then for no reason that I can discern, like Poole, Kuzma, Tyus Jones, they check out of the game, a couple minutes to go in the first quarter. And they don't come back till there's like 3 minutes left in the second quarter. It's not like the backups went on a run. They were doing worse than the starters did. So and I mean, they're benching them for guys like DeLon Wright and Muscala and Kispert and Landry Shamet, like not like guys that they
Muscala got great
part in their future. So it just makes no sense what the Wizards are doing. I swore off Jordan Poole in the second week of the season. I didn't jump back on until Wednesday. And so we're almost like we're getting close to the halfway point, I think, pretty quick here. Maybe I'll try Jordan Poole again. I don't know, in March or April or something, but I'm not going back to the Wizards here to sum it up. Just don't trust this team. 11 games, so many players to choose from. Cleveland side, though, way more interesting. Obviously, you can play the stars. I mean, Jared Allen, what he's doing right now is just crazy. Just on an absolute run. Put up 56 fantasy points against this team in 3 quarters. He didn't play a single second in the 4th quarter in that last game. I mean, if it somehow stayed close, he wouldn't have been doing as well as good if they weren't blowing him out. But, he could have put up 70 fantasy points or something. So 8.3K, still think a very reasonable price tag for him for what he's been doing and for the matchup, obviously. He's my favorite play on Cleveland. But, yeah, I mean, Sam Merrill, one thing that's interesting when you're trying to find value, and because DraftKings pricing is so tight, you do need to look more into this stuff than you had to in the past, is who will get the blowout run if it does happen, right? Because if you're trying to get to – and luckily, we just saw it with the same roster. I believe the exact same guys available for the Cavs last game that were here. Sam Merrill checked in halfway through the 3rd quarter and got to close the game. He played the last, 18 minutes or so, got 29 minutes total. Niang did the same thing. Thompson got to finish the game. So you do know, at least for the Cavs, in all likelihood, who will close the game if it does turn into a blowout, which is valuable information when you're playing the lowly Wizards. So I think you can play the Cavs either side. I do kind of think you should be either playing the blowout script, or it stays close enough where the starters get full minutes. But in the last game, at least, you could have played both sides, right? Allen got there in 3 quarters, and then some of these bench players got there in the 4th quarter while Allen was on the bench. So Wizards are just that bad. You can go to several guys here on Cleveland, and I do think pretty good early value on some of these Cleveland guys.
I had Tristan Thompson at 3,200 the other night. It was beautiful. He's only 3,300 tonight on DraftKings. So
some plays feel better than others. When you nail a Tristan Thompson backup, blowout run play, that feels pretty good. You give yourself a pat on the back for that one.
Yeah, I felt
real quick though on that point, if you just look it up, there's a few teams right now where the reserves hit at a very high rate against. Obviously, one of them is the Wizards. Another one is the Jazz, and the other one is the Pistons and Spurs. Those 4 teams right now. It's not teams, right? It's not terrible to just bump up on, get your projections up, look at the reserves, look at who is the primary usage guy, and then who also, like the Sam Merrill, gets blowout run. We saw that last game. Bump those guys up in these spots because they're pretty good plays.
Chris Henderson is asking about DeLon Wright. Says you would be grateful for any thoughts. He's 3,600 on DraftKings. I think you can probably find better value plays on the slate. What I will say is, again, in some projections, some optos, he is popping up there because of how they expect the game script to play. It's not a safe play whatsoever, AP. Go ahead.
He should get 0 minutes. Play Tyus Jones 38 plus and let Poole or Kuzma run point after that.
That happened for about a week, right? I mean, the Wizards, you reached out to Wes Unseld Jr., all of a sudden they condensed their rotation, and then he forgot about it. So.
You're going to get blown out either way. Embarrass the guys you're paying a lot of money. Embarrass them. Make them go out there and play. That's what that's what they should do.
All right, so there's your answer on DeLon Wright. It's kind of a disgusting play, but yeah, he's 3,600 on DraftKings and will probably play 20-plus minutes, mostly against the backup. So there you go. If you need him and you're going to have some nice studs, then I say go ahead. You only live once. YOLO. AP, DC. Actually, AP, we stick with you to go to the next game because DC already talked about Cleveland. And no, he didn't. DC, you got anything to say on Washington and Cleveland?
No, he did. He talked. We got you all mixed up.
We spent so much time on that game. It was tough to remember. All right. AP, we'll stick with you then. The Knicks head into Philadelphia. Philly favored by 6, 233.5 total. Only news here is on the Philadelphia side, DeAnthony Melton remains out. Korkmaz Covington and Malachi Flynn all questionable. This is one of the more interesting games to grab a stud piece from obviously. I think that the prices on the Knicks guys in particular are interesting. Obviously, impossible to ignore what Joel Embiid is doing this season. What are your thoughts here? Philly and the Knicks.
Did you call him Malachi?
I was going to point that out.
Oh, I'm dying. I love Fridays.
Is it Malachi? I thought you were supposed to say.
No. He's Malachi Smith from here on
out. Oh, man. So
a lot of time talking about Malachi.
I know. I mean, yeah, on the Philly side, look, like Joel Embiid, like probably underpriced here against Hartenstein. He's going to get whatever he wants. I have him as elite tournament play. It's when you're looking at Halliburton, the Atlanta Hawks game, a lot of salary to spend there. And then obviously people are going to go back to Donovan Mitchell, another great play, especially if that game stays close. You have Shea as well. It spreads ownership out so much at the top. And again, like Joel Embiid could put up a 70 piece against this team. And I don't think that would surprise anyone at all. The Knicks are a little bit tougher. Like I was blown away by OG's ownership on Wednesday with just how healthy the Knicks are. There's a lot of mouths to feed now with acquiring Josh Hart or OG and Nobi. And what was he? Do you guys remember? Like 40, 50% owned? Something like that?
50% owned. 50% owned in the 888.
Yeah, it's just, man, it's definitely tough. DC, shout out to him. He had an awesome call on Jalen Brunson. You could go back to him, but like I'm prioritizing Halliburton. I just think now he's priced in that range where I would rather try to get up to some of these other guys. So to keep it short, we have a lot of games, obviously, to go through. I'm kind of under on this game. I do want to find a way, though, to get Joel Embiid into a couple of my lineups.
DC, Philly, and the Knicks. I was part of the OG ownership last game out, and he was okay. He wasn't great, but he did enough. But now at 6,200 on DraftKings, it's a little tough to see that play, especially with how tentative he looked, still settling into the New York Knicks offense. What are your thoughts here?
I agree with AP for the most part. I don't think this is a game you need to go to with the teams mostly healthy at this point, but I'm sticking with the Jalen Brunson train. Actually moved down in price after 56-point fantasy performance from 8,900 to 8,600. Philadelphia also missing their best on-ball defender. D'Anthony Melton going to be out for this game. They do have Patrick Beverley, but he's not nearly the same defender that he used to be. And I still think it was my contention on Wednesday, and Wednesday, did nothing to disprove it. I still think Brunson has a more increased role on this team after the trade than he's given credit for. I think people, recognize you swap out quickly and RJ Barrett for OG Anunoby. What's RJ Barrett taking? 15, 16 shots a game, quickly close to the same. OG's like shooting 8 or 9 times a game, playing 40 minutes. Hartenstein has almost no usage. He almost never shoots the ball. And so this team, Quentin Grimes, if he plays, just doesn't do much. There's just not much left on the Knicks in terms of creative players. And Brunson, I still think he's going to continue to play 40-plus minutes in all games that are reasonably close. If you look at, things like time of possession, pick and rolls run, time, drives, potential assists, Brunson is way up there with, the elite guys in all of those categories. He is, I think, a true fantasy superstar in this league, in this role right now. And he isn't really priced as one. And he doesn't get owned like one. He was 1% owned on Wednesday. I think he'll be a little bit higher than that today, but I still think he'll go a little bit overlooked. Listen, I'll take my 40 minutes in what I think is a pretty good matchup in a huge role. I think his floor is very safe, and there's a ceiling there too. We've seen it recently from Jalen Brunson. So I'm going to stick on that train, not going too crazy elsewhere with the Knicks. And then, if you want to pair Brunson and Embiid, I think that makes a lot of sense. If this game stays close and those guys get their minutes limit, I think they both end up with very, very strong scores. Obviously an expensive pairing, but you can get there. There's enough value on the slate. So, yeah, it's a game that I guess I like the studs. Not going to too much here on the peripheral pieces, though.
Jalen Brunson lagging in all-star votes as well. So the people, DC, they don't realize that he is a true fantasy superstar. As you labeled him, that is how he has been playing this season, like a true fantasy and a true real-life superstar for Jalen Brunson, just 8,600 on DraftKings. DC, will stick with you and go right across the river to Brooklyn, Oklahoma City, heading in to visit the Nets. OKC favored by 5, a fairly pedestrian 234 total for this slate anyway. Only news here is Brooklyn's going to get a couple of bodies back, which is going to be pretty annoying considering the way that they've been managing their rotation recently. Dennis Smith Jr. and Lonnie Walker are probable. Spencer Dinwiddie at 6,300 looks like he's too cheap, but now you add those two bodies, and it makes me a little bit cautious about playing anybody on the Nets. What are your thoughts here, Nets and Thunder?
Yeah, pretty quick here for me. Unless the Nets have unexpected news, kind of a hard rotation to trust anyway. And even when you can trust the rotation, it's a little bit hard to pin down where the production is going to come from. They just have so many wings on this team. It's a team that can kind of interchange, kind of positionless basketball outside of the center. And now you add a couple more guys potentially to the rotation. It's not a situation on a big slate that I'm particularly interested in on the Brooklyn side. Spencer Dinwiddie does have a pretty nice price point, but also a really low floor for a $6,300 player. So I'm mostly off of Brooklyn and OKC, kind of a SGA or bust here. I prefer Halliburton at 10-2 to SGA at 10-4. I do think that'll be the general consensus and will probably be reflected in ownership, but I do lean that way myself. And I don't see a lot else to go to on OKC, which, no surprise. On an 11-game slate, 2 healthy teams, obviously going to be 2 teams that we're not super interested in, and that's the case for me here with this game.
AP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander getting snubbed in the early All-Star voting. Perhaps that motivates him. He's been playing great anyway. He gets a great matchup here against the Nets. And then Chet Holmgren at 7,600 is interesting to me as a tournament flyer tonight, just how bad this Nets team has been. Holmgren can randomly pop off for one of these 50-point games. What are your thoughts here, OKC and the Nets?
Yeah, I think I'd prefer to find salary for Jared Allen if I was going that route. With the Thunder outside of Shea, the rotation and minutes are really difficult. I will say, like, Josh Giddey had a good game against the Nets, but again, he's playing like 25 minutes. It's very difficult. You need him to be highly, highly efficient to get there. Lou Dort had a fine game, but man, we're paying $5K for Lou Dort in this matchup. It's just very difficult to do. I think Shea, I like. So when we look at this, Halliburton has to get ownership. He's going to be popular. Trae Young, obviously big total. If you want a pivot off of those guys, Shea is right there, same price range. Maybe a little extra motivated. The guy puts up like a 60-piece nightly. So I think he makes for a good tournament pivot. So, but overall, I'm under on this game. The Nets, they do weird rotational stuff too. I will say, like, Dorian Finney-Smith, he took so many shots that last game. I'm chalking it up as kind of an outlier. His shot's been way off, so I'm not going to chase the usage there. But if you want to, you can. I don't think I'll get there. Again, a fringe value play, but there's a chalk value piece that we're going to talk about later. And Josh Green, he's right in that price range. I'm trying to find viable pivots with upside off of Josh Green later on in this slate.
You can cross Andrew Nembhard off that list. He has been ruled out tonight. Some news dropping here from Indiana. We'll stick with you, AP, and move on to Minnesota and Houston. Minnesota favored by 4, a 217 total. Luka Garza questionable for the Minneapolis team. Tari Eason, has been ruled out, and Dylan Brooks will miss for Houston. Thoughts here on the Wolves and the Rockets?
Yeah, so Karl-Anthony Towns. I love this power forward matchup against the Rockets, and Karl-Anthony Towns, 7.2K, just way too cheap. Now, a lot of mouths to feed on the Timberwolves side. They're fairly healthy, but still Towns and what I think is a pretty good matchup here is very much a play for me. I think the Wolves get a nice win on the road here. Rockets have been really good at home, but they're down a lot of pieces now. Tari Eason, obviously Dylan Brooks. I just you don't want to be thin against the Timberwolves. They're a very good team. They have a lot of size. I think they handle the Rockets here. I think they make life hard on Şengün. The one play that's going way overlooked, and it's like, man, if the Rockets keep this one close, it could be a spot where like Fred VanVleet, puts the team on his back. You see that randomly happen throughout the season. He's a veteran, obviously. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that tonight. Kind of difficult for me to get there. I think it was Wednesday. We talked about Never, Jae'Sean Tate, and he made both of the shots he took in the 33 whatever minutes he played, but was not viable for fantasy purposes. So yeah, Never, Jae'Sean Tate. Eamon Thompson, I think a value piece that you could look at. Cam Whitmore, another one. I'm not too excited about these guys, though. It's really, if you think it's going to stay close, it has to come down to Şengün and Fred VanVleet. And that's why I put a bet in on the Timberwolves over on the bet side, 3.5. I just think they handle. And I think this is a really, really tough home spot for the Rockets. And I think Karl-Anthony Towns has a nice game here. Like I think he's, at 7-2, I got him putting up like 45 plus tonight. So I like Towns quite a bit.
DC, it's close to his lowest price point of the year for Karl-Anthony Towns. It's also some lighter prices on the Houston side. AP mentioned Fred VanVleet at 7,900 on DraftKings. Jalen Green is 6,600 on DraftKings. What are your thoughts here, Wolves and the Rockets?
I mean, this might be the lowest price of Karl-Anthony Towns' career at 7,200. I can't remember him being any lower than this. I mean, yeah, down from 7.8 last game, which was I believe his previous low. You don't have to scroll back very far when he's priced in the low to mid 9Ks. That was obviously an overpriced, but I think, AP made the point. I mean, 7,200 for Karl-Anthony Towns in a good matchup against Houston makes a lot of sense. He's still not a guarantee. There's just so many mouths to feed on Minnesota. I mean, even if you just look at the game log, 3 of the last 5 games has been below 25 fantasy points. So by no means a lock, even with the low price point, but definitely the upside is there, which is what we're really looking for in tournaments anyway. So I like the Towns call. He's my favorite play on the Wolves. I do think that'll definitely be reflecting ownership. I do anticipate him being by far the highest owned Timberwolf, but rightfully so, I think. But yeah, pretty low on this game overall, even with the injuries to Houston. Both these teams pride themselves on their defense. They play slow. Lowest total of the night's in at 217. Not a game that I want to get overexposed to, but yeah, kind of hard to pass on Towns at 7,200 for sure.
All right, hit the like button. We are going to need at least somewhere in the 135, 145 range in order to get to the plays of the day. And we're not particularly close right now, and we should be a lot closer. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. The code is New Year if you are not already a member at Run Pure Sports DC. We move on to a game that became a lot uglier with some of the injury news, people coming back from injury here. Charlotte heading into Chicago, the Bulls favored by 9.5, a 220 total. Brandon Miller will play. LaMelo Ball and Mark Williams remain out here. But the news on the Chicago side, Nikola Vucevic is going to return. Zach LaVine is going to return. They're going to come off the bench. Patrick Williams and Alex Caruso go into play as well. Going to make for a very, very muddy Chicago Bulls rotation. On the Hornets side, it does look like there's potentially a couple of underpriced pieces that may be able to take advantage of that muddy rotation for Chicago. What are your thoughts here?
I mean, Chicago, I don't know how you can play these guys. They've been priced up. Obviously, Levine's missed a few weeks now. Vucevic has missed, a week or two. And we've seen guys, obviously, Kobe White, appreciate the good run. Played him like 5-6 slates in a row a couple weeks ago. He was awesome. Really fun times there. But at least for now, that run appears to be over for Kobe White. Don't even know what Chicago's rotation is going to look like. A little bit weird, obviously, with Vucevic, Levine coming off the bench. I do anticipate, they'll probably play 25, 30 minutes, something like that. And, yeah, this is the Bulls team that we wanted to avoid early on in the season when their big three were healthy. Now they're back healthy, and they've got some guys like Kobe White who played well enough to probably earn some more minutes and take away some more from the returning stars. So Chicago's, frankly, unless DraftKings makes big pricing adjustments in the near future, probably going to be in a void for a while here until their prices normalize with everybody back, or they make some trades, injuries, whatever. But for now, yeah, pretty low on Chicago. Charlotte, I think Terry Rozier has to be in play at 8,400, just given how good he's been. I certainly prefer Brunson, but one nice thing about Rozier, you can play him at shooting guard, which is certainly a benefit. He's my favorite play on Charlotte. I don't see a ton else I want to go to there. Chicago playing really slow over the last month or so. You see this total sitting at 220. I think Charlotte might have the lowest individual team total on the entire slate. So pretty much Rozier or bust for me in this game overall.
AP, Charlotte moving into Chicago here. Thoughts on this game?
Yeah, Chicago, easy fade in my opinion. Obviously, Vucevic back, likely on some sort of minutes cap. But look, everyone's priced up. I agree with DC. Levine back too. Easy fade. And, I mean, the Hornets, gosh. Yeah, I mean, you could – Terry Rozier, 84. I'm fading. I'm going to make it easy. I'm fading this game. It's a big slate. You got to make some fades. 219 total. And, I'm definitely going to be under on this spot.
All right, makes it easy. We move on. The Clippers in New Orleans. Clips favored by 230.5 total. Only news here that is impactful is Trey Murphy is once again questionable. He's missed the last couple of games, AP. There are some interesting pieces in this game where you have tighter rotations, condensed usage, a couple of guys priced a little bit cheaper than they normally are. What are your thoughts?
This is why I like some of the Cleveland backups again, the reserves against the Wizards. Like Norman Powell was early on popping in projections, and what that tells me is the slate is somewhat starved for value, and like these backups for the for the Cavs that are like in the 3K range, they're no different than like a Norman Powell in this spot, and you're getting a nice value savings, a nice discount there. So. Again, the other thing that makes the slate interesting is you have a lot of spots where teams are healthy. There are a lot of mouths to feed. That's the case with both teams here. Like individually, much like I said with Boston, could Harden go off? Yeah, he could. But if he does, who else is going off with him? Most likely, no one. It's, individually these pieces could pop. You could mix them into your multi-entry lineups, but like as far as like a game stack goes, that's out of the question here for me. So I'm under on this game too. I think it's going to be a pretty good game. I think the Pels get the win here at home. Another bet that I like quite a bit, even though the Clippers have been really good. I just think when you look at matchups like this Pelicans team healthy, they match up really well with the Clippers defensively and offensively. They have a lot of size, and then it comes down to Zion, obviously doing his thing, getting to the rim. Ingram as well. I think the Pelicans, outmatch them, get it done. And individually, you can play these pieces. Zion as a one-off in a tournament is fine. Ingram, same thing. As far as like, do I love this game? Am I going to have a lot of exposure to it? No, I'm not.
DC, the Clippers and the Pelicans.
It reminds me a little bit of like, Boston, where a lot of good players and nobody that's like out of play due to their price point. But with two healthy teams, everyone just seems about price kind of where they should be. I mean, picking between Harden, George, Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard, like probably one of them has a big game, but it's really hard to predict who it's going to be. I don't see anything in the match, individual matchups pointing me one direction or the other. In that scenario, I typically just kind of avoid all three and avoid the guessing game, which is probably what I'll do here. I do think all three of the Clippers stars are in play. They're all playing really well. It's just I would limit it to one on any individual lineup. I actually think James Harden is probably my favorite of the bunch, but he also plays point guard. So might end up going to one of the forwards there as kind of that upper mid-range play if you need it. And then the Pelicans side, CJ McCollum's price has fallen far enough, or I guess it's kind of sitting at 7,300. I think he's a viable play. Just worry a little bit about the upside, right? I think he's pretty likely to give you 35 or 40. Probably not enough at 7,300 in tournaments to get there. And I don't know, how much upside he has beyond that with Zion and Ingram healthy. So, yeah, I think a fun game here. I expect it to be competitive, one of the better games of the night in terms of just watching quality. But from a DFS perspective, no real values stand out to me other than Norman Powell, who I think is going to be fairly high owned. And, these guys, these backups that come off the bench and their minutes are somewhat volatile, I try to stay away from the chalkier ones when I can, right? I think some of the better plays of the night, players are injured or whatever, I think that's the better chalk to eat. The bench guys that are popping just because, I don't know, the optimizers or projections, whatever, have one guy, 2 minutes or 2 points higher than the other, and he's like 5 times as owned as a result. I think those are the kind of the spots to save ownership on your lineups, at least kind of from what I've seen, just kind of the industry, the way it's gone, people kind of keying in on particular bench plays just due to, $200-$300 in pricing difference or 2 to 3 points of projection. Norman Powell, one of those guys where I think he'll be a little bit over-owned tonight.
All right, 3 games left to get the likes up into that 135, 145 range. Go ahead and hit the like button. And DC, will stay with you as we move on to a game where we're going to have to wait for news because it's important, particularly on this slate. Portland and Dallas. This is a rematch from a couple of nights ago. Dallas was favored by 11.5. They're now favored by 9. Line movement as a result of Luka Doncic being ruled questionable for this game. Total of 236.5. In addition to Luka, Derek Lively, Markieff Morris, and Grant Williams, all questionable for Dallas. Dante Exum, Maxi Kleber, and Richaun Holmes will miss this game. On the Portland side, DeAndre Ayton and Moses Brown remain out, and Jabari Walker is doubtful, which is big news on the Portland side. Rayan Rupert is going to be active for this game, probably not meaningful for DFS. What plays do you see here now? And then, of course, if Luka is ruled out, Portland at Dallas.
Yeah, so I'm off Portland outside of their big man situation, which is certainly very interesting. Obviously, got the starting center, DeAndre Ayton. He's been out, going to be out here. One of the backups, Moses Brown, is out, as you mentioned. And then Jabari Walker, who gets a bunch of minutes at the 4 and occasionally some minutes at the 5, is also out. Maybe AP has the answers on what Portland's going to do at center. I think they'll start his guy Duop Reith at 4K. I think he's interesting. I mean, he's got to be if he's a starting center. And then I assume it'll be, well, we'll see it because Badgie's gotten some starts there too. So I don't know what they're going to do. Neither guy's a fantastic player, but they're both so cheap. And I think they got to play some significant minutes here. I think one or the other will get there. Predicting who that's going to be is a little bit tougher. Maybe AP's got an answer for us there. But I am interested in both guys. Pretty much the only 2 on Portland that I'm really looking at. Obviously, Dallas is probably the biggest news of this slate with Exum already out. Morris, Grant Williams, all these guys, Lively questionable. Potentially, we get a scenario if Luka sits where Kyrie kind of gets to run the show. We haven't seen that much from the Mavericks yet this year. We did see it, I think, a couple games where he was like mega chalk, like 70% owned and busted. And is this his third game back from that heel injury? Yeah, wouldn't be surprised if he stuck a fork in some lineups if he comes in a chalk with the Luka news. But hard to avoid against Portland at 8,400. If Luka does end up sitting, I'll probably end up playing him and biting the bullet myself. And I do think it is news worth planning around, right? You kind of talk about some of these late games. It's like, do you have to build your lineup, with the if-then scenario? This is one where I think it's worth doing with Dallas. And who knows with Kyrie? I mean, I wouldn't be that shocked if he sat and Luka played or something like that, just because it is his third game coming back from a fairly serious injury. So, yeah, I think you do want to save spots in your lineup for some of these late games. There is 2 more games after this one to pivot if things don't go your way. But, yeah, I mean, Luka probably going to play. If he doesn't, obviously Kyrie, pretty amazing. And then obviously Portland, the big news is kind of their front court situation, which looks pretty dire. Maybe AP's got an answer. Duop Reith. We'll see if AP's on the Reith train tonight.
AP, these 2 situations seem to be important, but also among the most volatile. The last time, as DC points out, the last time Luka Doncic missed and Kyrie Irving played, he decided he really didn't feel like playing. And I think he ended up with 18 fantasy points. You have Duop Reith and Baji for Portland, who started the other night, looked like he was only going to play 10 minutes. Then he played a few more minutes because Duop Reith got ejected, and he really didn't do much. He ended up with 7 fantasy points. Last night on the pod, our guy Bobby, wanted to talk about Ish Wainwright, who played 17 minutes in that game, and he says he thinks that Ish Wainwright may be the guy to benefit the most at just 3,300 with Jabari Walker out. What are your thoughts here, Portland and Dallas?
Yeah, if Luka were to miss, I mean, the other game, it was against Memphis. I mean, not trying to make excuses, still a decent spot. Kyrie should have cooked, and he didn't. But this is Portland. They've just been terrible. Like, if Luka got ruled out, Kyrie would become the best play on the slate by a wide margin, in my opinion. So he was cooking against them last game in 20 minutes, put up like a 50-something piece. So if you're stacking these early games, that's like the one thing that you're probably going to be sweating. Where if you wait, you have that little delayed gratification, you could potentially benefit from maybe Luka sitting. So that's a huge question on tonight's slate. And yeah, it was the bigs got into all kinds of foul trouble for the Blazers. Baji fouled out, played like 12 minutes or something. Duop Reith, I mean, didn't foul out, but he only played 6 minutes. So the more you think about it, I do have concerns with him. I know that I thought I saw some. Oh, he did get ejected. Okay, but wasn't he on some type of minutes?
First came back from a lower back soreness injury.
Yeah, the other thing too is then it paved the way. Obviously, Ish Wainwright then played 17 minutes all in the second half. Like, look, there's a lot of ways that they could go. I agree with you, JT Hayes. I don't think if any one of these guys is going to be mega chalk, I would probably just fade the situation because it's probably a stronger bet than like going on Baji chalk or Duop Reith chalk or Wainwright chalk. I'd rather bet against those 3 guys than anything else. Scoot Henderson, I mean, 32. They're letting him play. Maybe minutes. He's going to play in a blowout. He's going to play no matter what. I think he's a fine play. And then it's Kyrie if Luka is out. Maybe you bet like Kyrie wasn't even bad with Luka in there. You could make the case, just play him, hope that Luka sits, and if he doesn't sit, hopefully you get kind of what we got last time. I don't think you'd complain if you got a 53 piece from an $8,400 player. And same matchup again. Could he come out and bust? Yeah, it's Kyrie Irving, but the matchup is very, very elite. The usage, everything, he checks a lot of boxes. So, and if Luka does sit, you're gonna want him. I want to find a way to get off of Josh Green chalk. That is chalk that I have no confidence. You're going to need to get there with high efficiency and then some steals and blocks to go along with it. So if the chalk donkeys get there in Josh Green night and they get there through like 2 or 3 steals or something like that, it'll be quite annoying. But that is chalk that I definitely want to be under on if I'm able to.
I would say if Luke is ruled out and a couple of these other guys in Dallas miss, the Grant Williams, the Liveleys, what have you, maybe Morris, now that makes Jeremy Grant and Anthony Simons a little bit more interesting because maybe this game stays close and those would be 2 of the main guys for Portland. So a little bit different, contrarian way to go depending on how the injury news shakes out there. AP, we'll stick with you and move on to the next to last game of the night. Orlando heading into Denver. Denver on a back-to-back after that thrilling win in Golden State last night. Denver favored by 9.5, 223 total. Some injuries here for Orlando. They're going to be without Markelle Fultz, Joe Ingles, Jonathan Isaac, and Franz Wagner is probably the biggest news there. Wendell Carter Jr. is questionable for the Magic as well. On the Denver side, looks like fully healthy. Julian Strother will be questionable here. Of course, you could play Nikola Jokic, but do you have the 11-5 on this slate when you've got so many other guys that are not on back-to-backs?
I mean, even on a back-to-back, we almost should be considering a Nuggets bet here. Everything is going to be on Paolo tonight. I mean, he's going to have like no help potentially at all, unless you believe in, Jalen Suggs can come out and do it. But like, you're talking Anthony Black, no usage at all. Caleb Houston, he's another low usage guy. You're going to see, like, if this game stays close, Paolo is going to have to put up a monster number. I mean, even against the Kings, you're talking a 40+% usage rate. Basically everything going through him. It just seems like one of those spots, though, where Denver handles them. It's a frustrating night. It's a slow-paced game where maybe Orlando limps to the finish line, barely scoring 100 points. That's kind of what I'm seeing. Tough, very, very difficult to play in altitude in Denver, especially when everything's on your back for Paolo tonight. I just think it's a tough spot. And the Nuggets being on a back-to-back, I'm not too concerned about that. And it could be a spot where it's like the second unit for the Nuggets too. They kind of, get things going even more because they have Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, these guys, and maybe they take a little bit of minutes off of the starters here too. I just think it's a really, really tough spot for Orlando tonight. So I'm going to be under on these guys. Your guy, Traveling Queen. I don't think I'll get there. I don't think I will. And Chumo Kiki. I mean, I think I am going to go and put a bet in. I like the Nuggets. I think they roll. Paulo has to have a monster night for this one to stay close. That's my take there.
DC Trevelin Queen is 3,600 on this slate. He played 38 minutes last game due to all the injuries. There is some buzz about him with DraftKings adding him to the pool this afternoon. But what are your thoughts here, Orlando and Denver?
Can you guarantee me another 38 minutes? Because if so,
I can't guarantee you anything with Trevelin Queen. I'm sorry.
All right, in that case, I'm out.
Chuma Okike played a bunch of minutes as well. Are these the plays that you want to risk your hard-earned American dollars on an 11-game slate?
No, they are not. I echo a lot of what AP said. I think this is a really tough spot for Orlando. They lose, I kind of think they're, co-best player in Franz Wagner, their guy who's really been creating for them a ton recently. I think that's a tough loss for him. I would have liked him some in the spot. And I do agree with AP that if Orlando, if you told me Orlando's going to keep this game close or win this game, I think it has to be a big, big game from Paolo Banchero. But, he's up to 8,700. And I really don't like this individual matchup for him. I know that's not the most important thing in the world in the NBA, but for yes, very, very nice there, Mr. Patrick Rice. But I mean, Aaron Gordon is like a horrible matchup for Banchero. Can match him in terms of size, athleticism, all that stuff. So it takes me off Banchero. If this was a better matchup, I would have been riding the Banchero train today, but I don't think I'm going to go there given the individual matchup that Banchero has and the tough team environment for Orlando. So, yeah, I think it's mostly Jokic or bust. I do think most people are going to see, a relatively lower total here. They're going to know Jokic is on the back-to-back, maybe suspect a blowout. And I do think he's going to come in very, very low-owned. He also hasn't been quite as smashing as much as he usually does recently. So, yeah, if you want to get, the low-owned GOAT into your team, I think today it's a good night to do it with Jokic, but overall, don't love this game a ton.
Can I make one comment real quick?
Yeah,
Kyle, appreciate you watching. I get it. I was watching that game. Matchup wise, though, the problem that your Magic have, and I've been a Magic stan. Go ask Jaime, our soccer guy in the Discord. I've been a huge Magic stan this year. The problem, matchup wise, they have KCP, very, very good defender. Jalen Suggs was incredible in the game against the Kings. And then you have Aaron Gordon, there to tag. I just think matchup wise, and unless like Aaron Gordon and the Nuggets rested a bunch of pieces, I cannot. I just think it's a very, very tough spot, and I just put a bet in. So there we go. Nuggets 9.5. There we go.
Price is pretty high as well. A lot of price bumps for a lot of these Orlando Magic players. Moving on to the last game. We've got 120 likes. We need to get about 10, 15 more to get to the plays of the day. But we'll hit the last game here. AP, Miami and Phoenix. Phoenix favored by 3.5, 229 total. Jimmy Butler and Haywood Highsmith remain out for the Miami Heat. Caleb Martin is doubtful for Miami. And on the Phoenix side, Kevin Durant practiced, as did Nasir Little. They are questionable, as is Eric Gordon.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, the Heat have been pretty impressive. Despite they're doing exactly what they did last year. We don't have to play Jimmy Butler. We just rest a bunch of dudes and our backups. They grind out some wins. It's like Jaime Jaquez has been incredible. I don't know how they do it. Spoelstra is a wizard. He really is. I literally don't know how they're doing it, but they're scraping by. They're finding ways to win. I think Jovic 4.4K, he's fine. Jaquez, I think he's fine too. And Tyler Hero. Like, Tyler Hero is another guy that his usage is insane. He's doing it on both ends of the court, getting steals, getting some blocks, and I'm showing like no ownership on him as well. So I think it's a tough spot though, and if KD plays, we should consider a bet on the Suns side here. But if he's out, I think this game becomes definitely more intriguing. It's just, for me, it's Jovic, it's Jaquez, and then Tyler Hero in tournaments, and Bradley Beal's priced where he should be. I don't feel I need to like play him. I think he's more of a tournament play. Maybe like I just don't think Bradley Beal is like that good. And it's not like we ever see him like consistently play a lot of minutes. So it's hard to like truly evaluate him. But somehow he scammed the system, because he's been like top 5 highest paid player going on like 10 years in a row now. And he never plays and never does anything. It's freaking wild. So, and if KD's out, you can always play Devin Booker. D-Book is always in consideration for tournaments when KD's out.
DC, Devin Booker, 9,200 here in this matchup. If Durant misses, what are your thoughts? You got some cheaper prices on Miami, too. AP mentioned Jaime Jaquez Jr., just 6,300 on DraftKings.
Yeah, this is kind of, if you're playing the Kyrie Luka news, you have another out here too, right? Where if Luka's in there, maybe if you arrange your team correctly, you can swap up to Booker if KD sits. So you do have kind of a couple outs in these late games, potentially for some really good lead guards. Obviously, Booker, that's a great price point for him at 9,200 if KD does sit, which obviously we don't know yet, but there's certainly a chance he does. So I don't mind that, but would definitely want KD out to play Booker, especially with Beal back. And yeah, Bradley Beal, 41 minutes in that last game. So I guess he's healthy and good to go, but I still don't think he's going to put up the numbers that we were used to seeing. You got to remember, he's playing with nobody with the Wizards these last few years. Now he's playing with two of the most ball dominant players in the league, in Booker and Durant. So yeah, 7,200 I think is a perfectly fair price tag for Bradley Beal with these guys healthy and his current role on the team. So yeah, it's kind of Booker if Durant is out. If all three are in, Booker, Beal, Durant, don't love much on Phoenix. And then I'm with AP. I think Tyler Hero, a very sneaky play. 8,100, a fair price tag with Jimmy Butler out. He's got big upside, going to play big minutes, and we're seeing him 1% owned. I will say, if you're on Kyrie and Luka ends up playing, I do like Hero better than, if you can make that swap at the guard spot, I do like Hero better than Kyrie if Luka is in, just straight up. And then if you need to get off the chalk for whatever reason, maybe your team's not off to the best start, Hero is a great play to give yourself some upside, but a play that nobody else will be on, puts up 60 piece when nobody has them, maybe he can dig you out of a little bit of a hole. So that's kind of how I'm looking at Miami. I think Bam Adebayo, you could kind of throw in that little bucket as well of a play that nobody's going to use tonight, but the upside is there. And, if you need a bailout play late, those two guys make a lot of sense to me.
All right. Well, Phoenix giving up a ton of points as well recently. So something to watch out for. We got up over 130, so we can go with the plays of the day. If you have a question in chat, we've got about 30 seconds to get to it. But we'll start, DC, with the Mom's Basement play of the day. What are your thoughts here for the Mom's Basement play of the day?
I'm going to run it back from Wednesday. Jalen Brunson came through for us in a big way at low ownership. I think he would have a little bit more ownership today, but I think he's going to get his 40-plus minutes. I don't mind the matchup at all against Philly. And to compete against this good 76ers team, I think they're going to need a big Jalen Brunson game. Got a little price decrease as well, which you'd love to see at 8,600. So I'll go with Jalen Brunson as the Mom's Basement play of the day.
Jalen Brunson for DC. I'll go next with the Eiffel Tower. A couple of plays in contention, but I think the ownership I'm seeing right now at 12% for Bogdan Bogdanovic at 6,100 in this matchup against the Pacers makes him one of my favorite plays on this slate. So I'm going to go with Bogdan as the Eiffel Tower play of the day. I don't love that he comes off the bench, AP, but at 6,100, he's playing 30-plus minutes and a 260 total. If his shot starts to go down, could be a 40 fantasy point performance for Bogdanovic, who is the gentleman's play of the day.
Yeah, I'm going to stay in that same game. And I know taking the easy way out, eating some chalk, but Tyrese Haliburton, this is just one of the premier spots against Trae Young, against a fast Atlanta Hawks team at 10-2. I do think with the other options in that range, it's going to cap ownership just a little bit, and I think you're going to need them tonight. So Tyrese Haliburton, my play of the day.
I'm showing under 20% for Tyrese Haliburton, so that is certainly nice here. And, of course, DC with a 1% call on Jalen Brunson. I like him quite a bit too. That price is nice in a matchup where the Sixers have been giving up a lot of points, and Brunson has been the engine for the Knicks. But that's it. That's it for Friday night. Enjoy your weekend. Good luck in your contests. For AP DC, I'm JT Hayes.